Meeting of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Today is Monday, August 12th. We're here in council chambers. Joining me is Councilor Clinton Woods. Today, our first item of business is to consider the minutes of the July 22nd committee meeting. If there's no additions or corrections, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval of the July 22nd meeting minutes.
All right, second. So that those minutes are approved. Our next item is we have a new application for permit for CPNC for a limousine service. Sergeant Knight.
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, the first applicant is Cahaba Limousine Services LLC. No discrepancies. Owner is Michael Maish.
Is the owner present? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so looks like you're based out of Hoover, is that right? At Caldwell Mill? I'm trying to remember where that is.
We're in North Shelby County. We're right near Pelham and Indian Springs.
Okay, all right, cool. And standard limousine service, I assume?
Yeah, it's a standard limousine service. Yeah, basically started to do events. We'd like to come and start doing events up here in the city, and as well as student transportation from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham Shuttlesworth.
Okay, all right. Councilor Woods, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just what type of vehicles do y'all?
Currently, we're running a 2014 Chrysler 300. It's a 120-inch stretch. It's got about 40,000 miles. We're looking to, if we start doing more of the student transportation, though, we're probably going to move and get an SUV also. Currently looking at like a 2018 Expedition Max.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering if the students rolling up in the limo from the airport. But
Surprisingly, the insurance is less on the stretches than the SUVs, so they may be.
yeah, wow. All right, move we send this to full council with a recommendation of approval.
All right, I'll second that. So this item will be advanced to the full council for consideration, and that'll likely appear on the council agenda in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have application also for CPNC, but this time for a non-emergency medical transport. Sergeant Knight.
Mr. Chairperson, next applicant is Good Hands Transport LLC. Owner Adrillian Smith.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
I want to, right now I drive foster kids. I'm a volunteer driver. And I want to become a non-emergency medical transport provider where I'll be taking the elderly to the doctor and people that need to go to the doctor.
Okay. Council Woods, do you have any questions?
No questions. I think we can send this to the full. I move we send this to full council with a recommendation to approve.
All right, I'll second that. So this will be advanced to the full council for consideration, and that'll likely be on our council agenda in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have a presentation from Kimberly Jackson from Alabama Power on EV programs.
Good afternoon, councilors.
Good afternoon.
As stated, I am Kimberly Jackson, Community Relations Manager with Alabama Power Company, and I will not be giving the presentation in full, but I just wanted to follow up per your request, Councilor and Chairman O'Quinn, regarding our EV programs. I have my colleague Peyton Cato here who's a part of our EV team at Alabama Power who will provide a detailed update, but we just wanted to generally give you some insights into what we're doing, how we're partnering with municipalities across our territory and across the state, actually, and then also how you may be able to help empower your constituents with some of this knowledge and offer up potential partnership opportunities. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Peyton.
Thanks, Kimberly. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm just going to open this up. Like Kimberly mentioned, my name is Peyton Cato. I serve on our electric transportation team in the strategy division, looking for ways to specifically help our constituents and customers decrease costs when they're looking at charging infrastructure expansion, whether it be funding opportunities, programs that we provide for Alabama Power support in that transition, and just here to be a resource for our customers, residential, commercial, and industrial. So I'll just kick it off with a few, let's see if this goes, there we go. I do want to go over our electric transportation strategy. I think it's awesome for the community just to be aware of what we're focused on, and those are identified here within these 4 areas. So we help our customers with incentives around adoption. What does the market trends look like? What does that look like for the state of Alabama, for the Southeast? How can we help understand range anxiety? We understand that there's a lot of concerns around electric transportation, and so just really providing resources for people to be educated around the industry. We identify and execute future growth opportunities in the electric transportation space, whether that's external partnerships with R&D, doing research to try to figure out how we can help support that growth. We promote Alabama Power's leadership for electric transportation among the Southeast and specifically here within the state. So partnering with our communities to, again, just represent opportunities for programs, whether it be, time of use rate or a commercial opportunity for make-ready infrastructure. And so just going to dive into some of that throughout these slides. And then lastly, helping with policies that drive transportation electrification. So there's a high cost around registration fees right now, specifically with EVs. So how do we help understand and bridge the gap on why that is, and what can we do to educate some of our dignitaries on how we can work together to provide, maybe be a lower cost on that end, or registration fees that's going to help expand the charging infrastructure and really just understanding where those dollars are going. So here's a glance at I know it's kind of small, we'll be happy to pass along this information and the presentation to you all after this meeting, but just to look at our state, we have almost 20,000 EVs in operation, and so I've been in this group for about a year, and over that year, I've seen that number go from about 11 to 12,000 to almost 20,000, which is double in size, and from January to May of this year, we've seen over 1,000 come onto new market, which here in this graph, it's amongst our service territory versus the state. Our service territory is exceedingly growing in those numbers, and so within our service territory, we have about half of those vehicles registered. So it's important for Alabama Power to understand the need for charging infrastructure. People have questions around, is the grid ready? Our answer is yes, and so we're doing a lot of things proactively in this space to help be prepared for when this number continues to grow and we see more interest around the community. Here's a look at our programs. I think that is the most important to highlight in this presentation. On the left-hand side of this screen, there's residential opportunities. So for our residents, we want to make sure they're aware of our EV night charging. That's a whole house power discount from the hours of 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. if they're charging their electric vehicle. There's also a level 2 rebate that's available, so you can apply for this program with a $500 rebate for a level 2 charger. That charger is the one that sits at your home. It's a lower power rating, not like the larger ones you see as your gas station model. This is that slower trickle overnight. And then lastly, we just set up a program called EV Gridwise that's optimizing the at-home charging and supports grid resiliency and does offer opportunities with gift card incentives and ways to enroll in the program, as we can help monitor and partner together with our residents to see where the usage is and how that can help support our grid resiliency for the best in that space. And then on the right-hand side, we have commercial and industrial. So the make-ready rebate is one to particularly look at. That's where commercial or industrial customers are looking to put in chargers, whether it be for a workplace charging opportunity or a public charging opportunity. We provide rebates at different power ratings. So for per port, they're eligible for a certain amount of money that's going to go towards the infrastructure that's all the way to, but not including the meter. So that's your conduit, your pad mounts. That's really the preparation site of putting in those chargers. And this is a huge deal as we look to funding opportunities that are available right now. We're trying to help, again, just let our customers know about federal and state funding and how you can stack that on something like the Make Ready program. So for federal and state dollars, a lot of times you've got to have an 80%. They'll provide 80%, but you have to provide the 20% match. And so we like to say that the Make Ready program may be an opportunity to help fill in some of those costs as you're looking at a total cost of ownership for that charging infrastructure. We also have special EV rates for that business electric vehicle time of use. So for each charger that's separately metered, you can be on a special rate for that as well, much like your residential opportunity. We have a turnkey solution in this space too. So if, City Hall is looking at putting in chargers and they have no idea where to start, we have an energy services group that can help with the end-to-end use for our customers with it, the contractors, the subcontractors, where they should go, which type of chargers should go where, and it's a great, really just concierge service for those that are saying, hey, we want to put in about 6 chargers, where do we begin? We also have an incentive in the forklift and e-True space. If you've got electric refrigeration trucks or you have forklifts within your fleet, this is also a rebate that we offer in that space as well. And the last 2 things that we are standing up currently and about to stand up is our fleet planning tool. I'm going to head into that in just one second, but that's an advisory service that we help any customer understand, hey, if we're looking at our fleet of 100 vehicles, what would it look like to electrify half of those? So we've got a tool that'll look at total cost of ownership. Where would it make sense? Maybe it only makes sense for 25 of those 100 right now where the business is and with the charging infrastructure. It could make sense for all 100 to be electrified. So looking at utilizing that tool to make recommendations for our customers in the commercial and industrial space, and those that have any size of fleet. And then community charging, we just stood up recently. We personally have about 13 DC fast chargers located across the state, 2 in each of our service territory divisions. And so that's primarily used for our fleet, but as our fleet aren't using it and they're using some of the slower trickle charge, we have now made that available for public access. So we're trying to help utilize existing infrastructure to be a resource for our EV drivers across the state. And we've seen an uptick in that usage in the past 8 weeks as we've stood that up with just 11 chargers. So through that study, we've seen the demand is there, and that EV drivers, whether it be in the state of Alabama or coming through the state of Alabama, it entices tourism, economic development, and we can see that just with these 11 chargers throughout the state. So next is another one that I want to highlight. It's the federal funding opportunities, and I think that a lot of our customers can see these funding opportunities and may be intimidated by the amount of work or the lift that may go into it, but we've tried to take a position to objectively educate our commercial and industrial customers around some of these larger opportunities. One that's open right now on a state level is ADECA. This past legislative round announced that they were going to put $4 million into charging EV infrastructure. Tomorrow, they're opening that state funding opportunity up at $2.2 million. That application will close at the end of September. And so we're taking that information, notifying our customers, meeting with them one-on-one to help be supportive, whether it's with a letter of support or they need specific utility information or they need to be connected to a grant writer and they don't have the resources. We're helping be that conduit for them and to support them in any way they can to apply for that. These are some of our grant successes. I do want to highlight here in Birmingham, we have 2 within the Clean School Bus program. We've seen Fairfield City Schools and Birmingham City Schools win over 20 buses in total in these past Clean School Bus programs. And that's a huge win for Birmingham to see just the innovative move in the electric school bus place and the health and safety around kids. It's a much healthier. You've got exhaust pipe emissions that aren't happening around children. And we've even heard success stories in bus drivers to have a more comfortable and ease with their job. A large diesel engine can really rattle. And so just to hear the wins around that and the success here within Birmingham as well as the support that we're offering across the state in that process as well. And so we played a key part in just supporting them in the application through letters of support and utility information that was needed to bolster those applications those past few rounds. There's also tax credits. I think when people hear tax credits, they get also, how do we do that? And the Inflation Reduction Act has afforded a lot of opportunities for people to take those incentives and stack them on the funding opportunities as well. And then you stack on a Make Ready program, and you could get to a zero net cost of that total project. So really, it's just understanding what's out there, whether it be the programs that the utility is offering, the funding opportunities, the tax credits, and how to best strategize on putting all of those together to get a project across the finish line when you're looking at that. Here is the ZappyRide fleet tool I mentioned earlier around a program we're starting. This is going to help, again, look at the total cost of ownership. So maybe it be Birmingham City, we're looking at your fleet, and it might make sense to make some of them electric because those in-town routes aren't as much, and it can cut costs in different areas to be able to move around in the budget to utilize that and other O&M costs you may have. It's customer friendly. You're going to be able to access the tool via the website. So if you want to go in there and check out different numbers, that's there for you to use. And it provides the data to help you make an informed decision when looking at converting those fleets. I think a lot of industry numbers, when we're making decisions about this, we hear around electric transportation, things going on in the news, or how much does the battery cost to replace, or, what are y'all doing about this? And so around the data and the numbers to back up those decisions, I think is really important in this space. And so we're trying to help provide that opportunity and that avenue for our customers to make informed decisions with this tool. Here's a map of our community chargers. Small but mighty list. It's in 6 locations, just 11. Like I said, in the past 8 weeks, we've seen these just 11 chargers be utilized at a significant rate. And I think that's because in some of these smaller areas, there's a lack of that charging infrastructure. And so we're trying to come in with these communities and partner and provide an opportunity. Or if a car is passing through, for instance, Eufaula being a smaller town, being away as people are headed to the beach, stopping there. We want the same here in Birmingham. So we have one here in Birmingham that's right over off of 18th that people can use, and it's open to the public as well. And lastly, we have our Drive Electric Alabama podcast. We partnered with Drive Electric. This is a podcast that just showcases and addresses a lot of the questions that people may have around range anxiety, or how long does the battery last, or what can we expect for the state in the next 10 years for this area to see growth. Are people really buying EVs? And so this podcast sat down with Director Boswell, Michael Staley with Alabama Clean Fuels to answer a lot of those questions that I might have and you might have and our constituents might have around electric transportation and where it's headed. And I believe that is all for today. Any questions? I think I rattled off a lot of information, so feel free to back me up or ask anything you may have.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Birmingham City Schools because I'd heard that, at one point they had plans to convert their bus fleet to propane. And then they decided to switch gears to electrification. So it's great to hear that they were successful in getting that funding. One of the things that I've heard in recent years, and that is sort of in our wheelhouse to ask questions about is the safety factor. So, I imagine there's a lot of checks and balances in terms of, making sure that the automobiles are as safe as possible, acknowledging that a traditional combustion engine vehicle is full of explosive material. But, one of the things that I've heard from police and fire in particular is, okay, what do we do, or how do we handle a situation if one of these electric vehicles were to, catch on fire? So can you kind of speak to that, like in addition to the charging infrastructure, which is really important, but just making sure that first responders are adequately trained and prepared to deal with, emergency situations.
Yeah, so I have a two-part answer to that. I think for Alabama Power specifically, we're looking at our own fleet and converting a lot of our vehicles. And one of the biggest priorities at Alabama Power is safety first. And what does that look like for our own employees as they're heading out in these trucks and in these cars to take care of, the needs of our customers. And so there's a lot of focus around our fleet area as they're testing these cars out and looking at, different ways to put in safety measures around what you're talking about. There's also a lot of R&D going into this space. And so there is the AMP Center at the University of Alabama that has partnered with Mercedes. We've partnered with them as well as the state to look at how can we best train and provide opportunities to train individuals in this space and a workforce development opportunity, quite frankly, for our state and for this industry. Another one is Bevel State. They just won a grant through the NEVI funds that were released this first round, and so they're implementing a training program in electric transportation, and that's going to be part of the curriculum is how do you handle the fires that are happening around these electric cars. I will say, I think this is a highlighted piece of just misinformation sometimes too. The news likes to really exploit something that has a big impact, and with that, the National Fire Association, we've done a little bit of research in that space, but an ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine, is actually have a higher likelihood of catching on fire than an electric battery is. But it's that education piece that we're really trying to help fill in the gaps for questions like you just mentioned that, hey, we see this in the news, that makes me scared to want to buy an electric vehicle, or why would I want to convert my fleet if that's a potential possibility? But like you mentioned too, it's a potential possibility with an internal combustion engine as well. And so it's a huge focus, but also a workforce development opportunity through these training centers that are being funded by these federal dollars as well.
Yeah, I don't have any stats on this, but, as a driver anywhere,
Yep.
If you've been around very long at all, you've probably seen cars that have been burnt out or seen
Yep.
them actively on fire. So
That's right.
it's like, I don't know how many we get annually in the city of Birmingham, but I imagine it's, a few at least.
Sure.
So one of the things I'm curious about too is that, I'm wondering if anyone is tracking where charging units are being done, in the private sector. So I'm aware of a couple of property owners that are moving forward with projects to set up charging stations. Some of them are, sort of pay as you use it there on the spot. But are you guys tracking that, or is the state, set up any kind of resource to track that?
So we're particularly helping our commercial and industrial customers in that space. I have conversations on a weekly basis with all throughout our territory and our divisions on, hey, we want to put in 6 level 2 chargers. We've seen in our parking lot that 20% of it is electric transportation. How can that be almost an HR benefit for workplace charging? We've worked with a lot of Protective has some workplace charging at their location. I think they charge, but it's at a lower cost. And so we have workplace charging as well. It showcases, meeting sustainability goals, innovation, and ways that people are working towards clean energy. And so it's a really quick way to implement that at a business. But I think to answer your question in the short, yeah, that's definitely a conversation. And now we're having more conversations. I was just telling Kimberly with cities. It's more of a, hey, how can we locate level 2 charging downtown where people are stopping and utilizing our businesses and our resources to stop and leisure for an hour on their way to north, south, east, west, and letting this be a hub for economic development as well. And so we're seeing it in the public and the private sector growing at probably the same rate. I think the highlight is on public sector because, you know, as people are driving through, they want to find the quick charger gas station model. But level 2 charging is a great benefit to the companies as their own employees are driving electric vehicles, and it incentivizes and creates an opportunity for them to be able to charge, you know, whenever they're at work for those 8 hours. And then they go home and charge, and you're cutting costs on gas at every angle.
So,
The different apps. Okay, she mentioned the apps. So there's, again, a whole host of vendors in the charging space. There's one called PlugShare. So as individuals are looking for, hey, how do I find a charger? Most nowadays on your Google Maps, on your iPhone map, there's charging locations popping up wherever you are. So it's like it's like a gas station. If it's a private charger, it's not going to show up on a public map. But a lot like what we did with our community charging infrastructure, it's all software and technology based. So if you had internal DC fast chargers for just your fleet and you were noticing that level 2 is more of a benefit and people were using that more in your level 3 bigger one, you might could be turning around and offering to the community at 40 cents a kilowatt hour. It's all on a click of a button to change that software to make it private as well. So PlugShare is a huge resource that people are using to locate
can you spell
chargers.
that?
Yes, PLUGSHARE.
Plug share.
PlugShare.
All right, I
Sorry,
got
I'm
it.
talking a mile a
Got
minute.
it.
You have to slow me
Yeah.
down.
Okay.
Yep.
So in the Inflation Reduction Act, you mentioned a couple of the programs there. Just, you know, a lot of our vehicles that are on the road are people commuting to and from work. Is there, you know, it's not necessarily something that I would expect you to know, but I'm just curious as to whether or not there's any incentive kind of built into the Inflation Reduction Act for employers to provide EV charging in their, you know, parking lots for their employees.
Yeah, so I do know the answer. It's tax credit 30C. It's the alternative fuel refueling property tax credit. It's a mouthful. But it's a census tract. So depending on where you're located, some don't fall within the census tract that qualify for it, but a lot of our customers do fall within it. It's a map on the IRA's website or IRS website that you can type in your address and see if you fall within that location. And that specific tax credit is one that I'm trying to highlight to people. I think, again, the whole tax, they're like, I don't know where to start. We won't see it till next year. But actually, it's a transferable tax credit and direct pay. So you can use a 501c3. Even if you're a tax-exempt organization, you still can qualify for it because you can direct pay or transfer it to the labor cost. And you get up to $100,000 per charging equipment. So let's say you have a level 2 charger that's going to cost around $20,000, $25,000 if you get the super software smart charger. You've got labor costs on top of that. You apply for Make Ready. And for that one charger, you might come out not having to pay a dime. And so there's a company that we've recently talked to. The name is Giraffe, and they're a great resource we've been pointing people to because at no cost, they'll apply for the tax credit. They will help you with direct pay, transferable tax credit, and their cost is at the end when you receive it. I think it's a small percentage, but at the end of the day, we're not tax advisors, let me just disclaim that. It's more of like, hey, let me point you to this really small but mighty tax credit that's located in the Inflation Reduction Act where you can utilize on these chargers. It also supports workforce development. So you have to use an apprenticeship program to input the equipment. And so we're working with our, workforce development team to connect people to the training programs that are implementing those charging stations. And so if you want the full 30% off your total cost of project, which is typically what that line sheet comes out to if you utilize the tax credit, you have to use a required apprenticeship program to implement it. But a lot of the the contractors that our energy services or other partners are working with are using required apprenticeship programs to put that in. So it's a full circle tax credit that I would love for people to know more about in the commercial and industrial space, but it can be a private or public sector utilizing that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. You know, and one of the things that, you know, I'm glad to know now, because in the city of Birmingham, just in our city center, we have, you know, tens of thousands of people that commute in to the city center every day. That has a big impact on our air quality.
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing that there's a tool to, you know, start just changing that situation, you know, fortunately, emissions on vehicles have improved dramatically over the years, but could certainly, I mean, it's hard to beat no emissions.
Right.
So, Councilor Woods, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to ask if you're aware of when the school buses got converted?
So they haven't been converted yet. They just won the round this past spring, early spring, or late fall, I believe. But they have about 90 days to accept the grant. So we always, when we're educating school systems and they have a hesitancy towards, I don't know, especially a rebate is a great opportunity. They have, I think, 90 days to accept. And then I believe they did accept. We've been working with them through charging infrastructure and what power needs they need to be able to implement a charging depot for those electric buses. And then I think they have within 18 months. Now, factor in supply chain. There is going to be some hurdles to get through when those come in. But I think that's pretty understood throughout this process. But yeah, they're supposed to be up and running within 18 months. Now, school systems may have to work within winter break and summer break to transition that fleet. So more specifics around when that's happening, but we've had their bus vendor reach out and the account manager talk to us about, hey, you know, we're ready to apply for Make Ready, because they also qualify for that as well to help cut costs as that charging infrastructure is going in.
So it's in process.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, how did I miss that?
motion.
All right, thank you.
All right. So one thing that we haven't touched on yet that I'm curious about. So I actually went to California a couple of months ago for a National League of Cities conference, and actually met a vendor there who had a mobile trailer that's basically a big battery unit on a trailer. And I talked to her for a while, and she said that she was in conversation with Alabama Power, but the conversation that I had with her was just really kind of sharing some of my, or one of my pet peeves, which is food trucks using combustion engine generators. And, you know, love food trucks, hate having to scream my order out over, you know, a generator that was purchased down at Harbor Freight. These, she was telling me that these units, one of these units can power about four or five food trucks. And, you know, that's something that I'm really interested in. I think, you know, the community at large really enjoys the additional, you know, options provided to them by food trucks. But, you know, if you come down to City Hall on Food Truck Friday, it's the same thing, you know, great environment with people milling around, but you know, lots of noise too. And there's like huge numbers of examples of that. But, you know, I'm curious, you know, what we can do to sort of make that a more commonplace alternative for people to, for specifically food truck owners to utilize, I think there's probably lots of other applications. But in any case, just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, what was the company that you talked to? Do you remember the name?
I have got their card on my desk, but I want to say it's like something like Moby or something.
Okay, so they went through the Techstars program, I believe, which is the Tech Energy Accelerator here in Birmingham that we partner with. And I think that I spoke with them, but they're like a mobile, like battery storage, basically. Like if your car ran out of gas on the side of the road, they could be a resource type, or like for large. There was also one called Ziggy that kind of had the same aspect, but you see more and more of that type of business coming to light because it's needed. And I think that's an awesome solution for food trucks instead of 12 generators going on at the same time, and you can't even fellowship when you're trying to get a taco out here on
Right.
Food Truck Friday. We haven't had specific instances of partnering in a pilot program like that, but I think that would be a really cool opportunity and a project just to try out with that type of resource coming here to, maybe as a Food Truck Friday that hey, everybody, let's plug up to this battery that's mobile. And what would that look like for the city to be able to utilize a resource like that, outside of just food trucks, but other ways to implement something like that?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, and this is, more on me, but it's a big enough pet peeve for me to, consider, helping with making that option available, especially in relationship to the events here at City Hall.
Sure.
So, just keep that in mind, I guess. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'll reach back out to that vendor to let them know that I'm still interested.
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you want to reach out and then connect us, we can certainly have a conversation and figure out how we may be able to facilitate a pilot to Peyton's point, or, just explore what the opportunities could be in partnership with the city. But, feel free to reach out and we can definitely have a discussion about it and see what we may be able to pursue in partnership.
Cool. All right. Anything else we need to discuss?
That's right. The future.
Yes, the future is now.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right,
Yes,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. All right, is there any new or old business we need to bring up? Colin, you got anything you? Okay, all right.
All right, we'll talk speed cushions next time.
All right,
I move adjournment.
second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.